Well, I have noon on my watch, so we are going to get started. My name is Seth Green, and I am pleased to welcome you on behalf of Loyola School of Education and the Baumhart Center to Navigating Educational Excellence and Equity, a webinar where we will be exploring how schools and educational institutions in the K-12 space can be looking at both of these goals amidst COVID-19. I want to just start by sharing how we came to this topic. We believe that as a center focused on business strategy, that the future of our businesses depend on a much more equitable distribution of educational opportunity in our country. We are currently facing what we consider to be twin pandemics. The 400 plus year pandemic that is human-made and that has left out large parts of our population from the promise of educational opportunity, and the current pandemic, which is the one that is now disrupting that already inequitable system of education. And amidst this, we are eager to partner with what we consider to be the pioneer in driving equity in education, which is our School of Education, and the phenomenal dean there, Malik Henfield, who is bringing the entire school behind anti-racist education and truly moving the needle in terms of this work in both excellence and equity. And so it is an honor to be sharing the opportunity today with the School of Education. And to give you a sense of what we're going to be talking about, Dean Henfield is going to be offering a strategic overview of these topics. And then we're going to be hearing from three experts, an alum who makes us enormously proud, LaTanya McDade. Chief McDade is the Chief Education Officer at Chicago Public Schools. Jennifer Hodges, who is the director of the Whole Child Fund at KIPP Chicago, and then Kelly Ferguson, who is a clinical assistant professor here at Loyola. And then we're going to get to your questions at the end. And so without further ado, let me turn it over to Malik Henfield, who is going to be sharing the strategic overview with all of you as we walk into this topic.
Thank you, Seth, for the introduction, and so glad to be here on such an important topic. As he mentioned, my name is Malik Henfield. I'm the new dean. Well, I guess I can't claim new anymore. As of June 3rd, 1 year in, dean of the School of Education at Loyola Chicago. I'm also the executive director of a new initiative instituted last week, as a matter of fact. All of the deans have agreed to have racial justice be one of our strategic priorities moving forward. And I will be leading the deans and others on campus to understand exactly where we are and where we need to go in order to become known and live the mission of being an anti-racist organization. It's very exciting work and totally related to what we're discussing today. Next slide, please. So just to set the foundation just a little bit, and I certainly don't want to take up too much time given our illustrious speakers. Worldwide, when we think about the pandemic, 8.06 million confirmed cases, 440,000 deaths. US, 2.21 million cases, 2,210,000 cases, 119,000 deaths. In Illinois, 134,000 confirmed cases and 6,507 deaths. Oftentimes we look at these in terms of numbers, but there's so many lives that are impacted, and not just those individuals, but the periphery of the individuals that they're connected to are impacted by all of this, not just the deaths, but also the cases. We hear oftentimes about the impact of being stricken with the coronavirus specifically, and the impact that it has on these individuals as they try to navigate their lives as normally as possible. And that's in large part what we'll be discussing today. Next slide, please. But when we think about the impact, we also have to look at the data and disaggregate it, right? So in Illinois specifically, depending, because it fluctuates, depending on how much testing we do, 2 to 3 times the death rate Black folks have when compared to white residents. When we think about our Latinx community, the highest rate of contraction in the entire city. And there are reasons for that. This is an ongoing phenomenon, and we know quite well that this global pandemic has only highlighted what we've already known, the disparities in the city of Chicago, as well as the nation and the world in relation to folks of color, specifically Black and Latinx brothers and sisters. Next slide, please. So again, when you think about COVID and the impact that is happening across the world, we think about it, in my view, I broke it down into personal, social, career, and academic, which is where we're focusing on today, but they're all interrelated, right? So just using myself as an example, I've got a brood in my house. I've got an 11-month-old, a 4-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 27-year-old who's now flown the nest, but still connected to some extent as much as possible at 27 years old, right? And just the impact of thinking about what exactly are we going to do? Will my 27-year-old have a job? My 17-year-old, he's thinking about colleges. Will he be able to get into the school that he wants to go to? Should he be going to those schools? What precautions are they taking, right? My 4-year-old, who's been kind of grazing, going from room to room between my wife and I, just kind of figuring out what to do. And she's watching having much more screen time than we ever intended for her to have. But what are we supposed to do about that, right? And then my 11-month-old, on the plus side of things, I was home to see her crawl and get close to walking now. But at the same time, shouldn't she be congregating and playing around with other kids her age, like my other children did when they were younger? And the social aspect of things, as I just mentioned, it ties into that. I've been reading a lot about individuals who are, unlike myself, are at home alone. And these folks have not been in contact with another human being for months. Many of these individuals are our students. Many of these individuals are our parents and our families and our community members. What impact will that have on them as they come back to school and to work in the fall? Career-wise, thinking about, for example, at my institution at Loyola, we have individuals who graduated into this. And as an institution, we're doing everything that we can to make sure that they understand that they still have a home at Loyola, and we've done some things, but it's not enough. Many of our students can't remain here. They have to return back to their homes and support their families. Many of those members who've lost jobs, there's a huge burden on them, and the responsibility that they are having to take on at this important time of their life, words alone can't describe. And again, we're thinking about academic, right, which ties all of this together to some extent. All of us on this call right now are in some way, shape, form, or fashion a leader. So not only are we personally dealing with the issues at hand, personally, but in our work, we're also having to support others and think about ways to make sure that they feel taken care of. And all the while making sure that they understand that we've got this, even though in our heart of hearts, no one's got this. There's no blueprint for this work. We're all trying to figure it out as we go. Which brings us to our speakers for today. Each of them have expertise given their experiences with the issue. And without further ado, I'd like to pass it on to our CPS Chief Academic Officer, Latanya McDade, Dr. McDade, who will speak about her experiences in CPS and what they're doing to prepare.
Thank you so much, Malik, and thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this critically important webinar series. I think I'm not alone when I say, as a 20+ year veteran educator, I have absolutely never experienced a more challenging time in our world, and particularly in education. But I'm so grateful for these opportunities for us to come together in dialogue and share thoughts around how we chart a path forward. So I'm really excited to be a part of today's presentation and panel. So what I would like to do is just share a little bit about what's been happening in our district. Like many districts across the country, we're trying to figure this out. We've been trying to figure this out since the closure. And so many things that you touched upon, Malik, just resonates with me both personally and professionally, because if nothing else, COVID-19 has just exposed so many deep inequities in our city and our country, from food insecurity, housing insecurity, the digital divide that we're experiencing within the district, the need for mental health across our city and in our communities. And so, of course, as you know, education is impacted by all of that, because we're only one of the systems that surrounds a child's development to be able for them to be able to experience success in school. So I'll go through a little bit of what we've been doing during the COVID-19 closure to continue learning for our students, and not just from the academic side, but to support our families and our communities to the best of our ability with some of those other issues of inequity that exist. I'll start with just a quick snapshot. If you can go to the report card, just a quick snapshot of who we are as a district. This is our 2019 academic report card. And it's important to just note some of the progress that the district has made right now. Just do a couple of quick call outs. Right now as a district, we're at an all-time high graduation rate. We're nearing 80%. And that's important to note when you consider that just a short time ago, barely 50% of our students were graduating from high school, and now we're nearing 80%. We have 90% of our freshmen on track to graduate. Close to 50% of our students are graduating with at least one or more early college credential in their back pocket, which we know is going to contribute to them being able to persist in college or realize a career in a particular industry. And close to $1.5 billion in scholarships were earned by our graduating seniors. I say all that to say that the district has made tremendous progress over the last decade. And when we think about COVID-19 and what this school closure, this pandemic has done in terms of what could potentially happen, not just in the next year, but future years as it relates to learning loss, is all the more reason that it's critically important that we figure this out to make sure that students still have access to high quality educational experiences, as well as the supports that they need to be able to thrive. I think what's important to note also, as I think about some of the statistics that Malik provided, you know, with our district, we have 355,000 students across 642 schools, and the majority of our students are students of color. And 76% of our students are students from limited income backgrounds. So when you think about the communities that are hardest hit by COVID-19, you'll see by some of the services that we provided that's in Chicago, primarily our students living on the south and the west sides of the city. And so I want to just share how we've been, trying to support our families and continue learning by going into some of what we've been doing around remote learning. So if you can move into some of the things that we've been doing for remote learning. Of course, in short order, we had to switch from the learning experiences that we know in the classroom to completely virtual and digital learning, where all of our students are on some type of platform. As a district, we recommended Google as our platform, and so that's what we've been using. Just a little bit of detail around what we've been doing with remote learning, if you can move to the next slide. So each of our schools had to create a remote learning plan, and that was based on guidance that we distributed as a district. So you could imagine with the closure, within 2 weeks, we had to develop comprehensive guidance that established expectations and standards, because we didn't want for there to be lower expectations for certain communities. But keep it in mind that during this time, we have to lead with flexibility and grace, because we have to consider all that's happening socially and emotionally with our students and our families. And so schools had remote learning plans. We figured out how to track student contact and engagement. We developed grading guidelines, offered professional development, engaged our service providers to make sure that we went through the right process for them to still virtually provide services. So a lot has happened in a short period of time to keep our teachers teaching and our students learning. Going back to the inequities that, highlighted at the top of this, the digital divide always existed, but what COVID-19 did was put it under a microscope. Right. And so it became a sobering fact for us. We, in a short period of time, have distributed more than 130,000 devices. And even with that significant distribution, we still have students that don't have access to technology. And those devices include not just, Chromebooks and iPads, but also hotspots, because what's a device when you can't connect to the internet? We've provided packets at food distribution sites for families who cannot or who are not digital, and then supporting our students with special needs. Our most vulnerable population has been so challenging, and so we continue to refine our remote learning plan to serve our students with special needs, and even distributed books across 50 food sites for our early learners so that they can continue to develop a joy and a love for reading during this time through independent reading. Some other ways that we're supporting now that we're rounding out our school year. So this is our last week for students, and we're in the process of finalizing transcripts, grades, graduations have happened, but we are going to be offering summer programming because we want to make sure that we're still staying connected to our students and still providing learning opportunities for our students. Now, this is a modified list of offering, of course, but we still are offering virtually. ISB guidelines came out around in-person summer school potentially for the summer, but we determined that we would need to still move forward virtually because what it would take to get our facilities up to par in that short time to make sure that students can return safely, we just would not be able to do. And we want to make sure that we're hyper-focused on re-entry in the fall and that we're really prepared for that. So summer will be virtual. Some of the things that we've provided as supports beyond the academic piece, and I think this part is so critically important because it really speaks to the need to make sure that every system within this ecosystem is coming together and surrounding our students so that they can be supported to be successful, not just in school, but in life. When you think about the fact that just since March 17th, we have provided grab-and-go meals to our families, and we have served over 15 million meals to our families in this city. If you advance forward, I'll give you a little bit more detail on that. If you look at this map, speaking to what I talked about in terms of the South and the West Side and demand, you'll see two things here. On the left side is a map that just shows where students are served, the number of students served in different regions. And then on the right side is our home meal deliveries. So where families just couldn't get out and come and get meals, where we had to deliver. And you'll see the frequency from high to low. And you see where that pocket that is the deepest blue in the greater Stockyard area near West Side, really just highlighting where the greatest needs are. A breakdown of some of that. We started out distributing meals across 500 schools when we first shuttered, and then we did a needs assessment and we were able to scale that back to 300. But even when we scaled back to 300, 75% of the sites were located on the South and the West Side. 90% of our students live within 1 mile of a meal distribution site, and we still have 58% of our CPS schools offering free meals. And because of the demand, because of the need, we are, even though our school year officially is coming to a close, we will continue to provide the meal distribution service throughout the summer. Kind of rounding this out, facilities, the other space where we've had to dedicate a lot of time and a lot of change. We typically do enhanced cleaning, and deep cleaning is 3 types of cleaning that our facilities undergo. Enhanced cleaning is your typical routine. Deep cleaning we always do when there's when schools are closed, whether it's the summer, whether it's the winter break or the spring. But the environmental cleaning is a piece that we've added in response to COVID-19. So we have mitigation strategies for the virus and impacted areas of schools where there have been a positive case of COVID-19. And so we are complete in both stages, the first 2 stages. Every school that has had a positive case of COVID-19 has undergone environmental cleaning, and we're about 99% of the way there when it comes to deep cleaning across all of our schools. So where do we go from here? It has been a tremendous effort to try to keep our teachers teaching and our students learning while still providing those basic foundational supports to families throughout the city. And so right now we are in the re-entry planning stage. We do have a COVID-19 task force. We are working with our sister agencies throughout the city to really figure out a path forward for how we return. One thing is for sure, whether we're able to bring students back into the building physically, we have a hybrid model which may actually be the case, or we're completely virtual in the fall, we know that school will still look different for our young people. And there is nothing that can take the place of in-person, in-class learning and the connections that's made between students and teachers. But doing nothing just isn't an option. So if we don't have the ability, the same way we had to pivot very quickly, short order, when we switched to remote learning in March, coming back in the fall, we want to make sure that everything that we've gleaned through this remote learning period, we apply that to improve, as well as make sure that we can safely open our doors should our students be able to return in the fall. So a couple of things I want to point out while we don't have all the answers. I just want everyone to kind of know where we are as a district and what we're focused on. The CDC has given out guidelines, and there are some significant changes that we do know for sure will have to occur. One, face coverings for students and for staff, hand sanitizer readily available throughout all of our buildings, stringent cleaning and disinfection protocols will have to be in place, and student and staff daily temperature checks. These are all non-negotiables by the CDC. And in addition, the thing that's most important to me that I want to call out is prioritizing social and emotional needs and supports of our students and our families and educators, right? Making sure that we are not neglecting to attend to the social and emotional needs of our students, and the health and wellness, mental health and wellness also of our educators. So that is going to be a need that's greater now than ever before. We still have more questions than answers right now, but we're really committed to putting out full guidance for reentry within the coming weeks, and we're working diligently to do that. We do know that continual guidance is coming out from the state as we move through the different phases of reopening in our state, and so it's very fluid, but we are hard at work with the task force, a diverse body of stakeholders contributing to that so that we can get guidance out. And the one thing that I'll say that I can guarantee you from CPS, as a district, we are committed to supporting our families, making sure that they still have access to education, and prioritizing their social emotional needs and providing them with all of the supports and resources that we can, and quite frankly, that we should, and it's what our students and our families deserve.
Well, thank you so much, Chief McDade, for that presentation. And much more importantly, thank you for your leadership in this moment. It is extraordinary to hear someone who is the Chief Education Officer talking so deeply about meals and about access to technology and about hand sanitizer. And it's because you realize that all of those are pieces of the building blocks that make it possible for our kids to learn effectively. So we're grateful for you and for your commitment in this moment. And what we want to do now is go from the macro picture that you presented for the whole of the school system, and we want to look into one example set of schools. And because Jennifer Hodges, in addition to being a phenomenal director of the Whole Child Fund at KIPP Chicago, is also someone we are very proud to call a Baumhart Scholar in her second year now of our MBA. And we are really excited to hear from her about how KIPP Chicago is approaching this moment. And so Jennifer, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, Seth. It's truly an honor to be with you all today. I would be remiss to say that I am moved and honored to lead this call with such dynamic and stellar leaders. I'm a proud Black woman every day, but I am especially proud today. So thank you for having me. KIPP Chicago is a part of a national network of public charter schools. Our mission is to create joyful, academically excellent schools that prepare students to pursue the paths they choose, from college to career and beyond. So essentially, we want to make sure our students are leading a life of choice. Now, we know that addressing the educational needs is key, but it is only one piece of the puzzle, and that for a person to really truly be successful, especially in Black and Latinx communities, it's an imperative that we support the social emotional needs as well. We've been able to see the needs of our students and our families, serving communities that have been plagued by disinvestment, racist practice, and systemic racism. And we've evaluated, what we can do to really go deeper in education and intensify the components of student success. And so here we've launched Whole Child. So it is our approach to removing all barriers to student access, or student success rather, and matriculation, by identifying the student's needs, the household opportunities, as well as teacher well-being. The Whole Child is addressing these needs in a direct and tangible manner, all working in harmony to meet the long-term needs of our students. You can go to, thank you. So KIPP Chicago has 8 campuses. We serve 3,000 students, K through 8, and 1,500 alumni through our KIPP through college program. Essentially, if a student joins KIPP from kindergarten and stays with us throughout their college career, we're serving them for almost 20 years. So we are proud to serve our families on the south and west side of Chicago, and we are very proud that all of our campuses achieve ratings of 1 or 1+, which speaks to the brilliance of our students, the talent of our teachers, and the investment of our parents and caregivers. Can move to the next slide. Thank you. So the Whole Child Fund offers social emotional support to students, parents, and teachers in a direct and harmonious way, as I've stated. Here we have the 7 priorities listed. And so I'll go through each goal and just share with you where we were in our goals pre-COVID and how we've been able to pivot post-COVID. So starting with increasing family and community partnerships, we are excited to launch programs to deepen our partnership with KIPP Chicago families in the communities where we teach. We believe that by elevating the family, we elevate the students' long-term and generational potential. So an example of this, we've created a cohort of parents who are pursuing their high school diploma. So our goal, again, is to really elevate the economic potential of both the parent and the student in a way that will offer more mental capacity for our families to live beyond basic needs and to live a life of choice. Moving to the next is embracing an inclusive and challenging curriculum. We've adopted the CPS new LGBTQ inclusion curriculum. We host annual social justice fairs, and we are prioritizing identifying a meaningful writing curriculum that equips our students to harness the art of telling their own story. So really owning their own narrative versus having some of the media and external opinions being placed upon them. Sharing our resources from our Children's Museum of Art and Social Justice, we really are elevating the mission of making art that demonstrates impact, engages the students, and inspires teachers. Our goal is to offer students, teachers, and our community members the opportunity to exhibit art on a quarterly basis. Our hope is that the exhibits will elevate the voice of the artists, creating community, belonging, and nurturing creativity. We believe that by doing this, we're raising awareness to key social and racial injustice concerns and demonstrating to our students that they have a voice and they can utilize their voice in making change for the community in which they want to live. Integrating social and emotional learning has been integrated through mindfulness pilots and the inclusion of a framework for our toolkit from Yale Institute's Ruler program. Our students practice meditation, mindfulness, breathing, yoga. All of these are tools for self-regulation. We know that are so important, specifically for the communities and the children that we serve that are experiencing a myriad of traumas, every day. So being able to define their emotions and use language to express their thoughts and feelings is key for mental well-being. And we know that also accelerates the amount of information they're able to retain and support in their educational journey. Cultivating identity development practices, we're supporting a cohort of leaders of color to thrive in management roles and increase a positive identity affirming imagery at each school. So essentially this goal is ensuring that every place that our students, every inch of the building is covered with images that reflect them, from our teaching staff to the images on the wall, so that, again, changing the narrative from what is given in media, that they're able to see a positive reflection of themselves and be able to live create a dream and live a life of choice. addressing food insecurities. Very simply put, our goal is to offer food pantries at each of our campuses, and we've been able to do that on our Southside campus. And then we're also exploring opportunities with healthy food providers, so offering organic meals as well. And then enhancing teacher well-being. We're enhancing staff holistic well-being by providing free wellness workshops at our museum. But this also includes financial advising, identifying a variety of discounted health wellness partners. So the goal is to identify 10 partners there where our teachers can participate in, if it was mindfulness, so yoga, art classes. We created a partnership with Chill, meditation, core power yoga, and so on. But all of these are a way that we know that happy teachers mean happy students and happy classrooms. So our pivot post-COVID, I'm proud to report that we have essentially provided 936 technology, so Chromebooks, to each of our students. We are in 99%, we've had contact with 99% of our students as well, and 93 are engaged in completing weekly assignments. In addition to this, we've sent 95 Wi-Fi hotspots home, like to Chief McDade's point was the point in, having the devices if you can't use it, or if you don't have access to Wi-Fi. So we're proud to report on that. And just one note is that these 95 students are in addition to the ST or students in temporary living situations. So essentially any student who doesn't have stable or permanent residence. And these students have also received hotspots from CPS, which were distributed by KIPP Chicago, and we're very thankful and appreciative of that. And thank you. And so for addressing food insecurities, the main goal, as I stated, pre-COVID was to provide food pantries at each of our schools. Post-COVID, we've pivoted to one partnership with Guerrilla Gourmet to deliver organic foods to our families, which remove the barrier of access to our families without transportation or who have disabilities. And we are definitely thankful and grateful for CPS's grab and go meals. That's been very supportive of our families and our network as a whole. Addressing the social emotional or the emotional wellness of our group and our families, today actually I'll be offering grief workshops with our partner Rush. So Rush Medical Center will help address the emotional needs of our communities who, as you know, have been disproportionately affected by coronavirus infections, death, and economic losses. But not only that, just the isolation and disconnection from, friends and family and so on. And then social emotional learning has continued. Our goal is to offer as much consistency and normalcy as possible, but then also continue to offer the tools for our students to manage the stress. I have a 7-year-old, and while, we're adjusting to what life has been like outside of school, we've tried to maintain our own, I would say, stress relieving techniques and enjoying fun or having some fun as well. And so within our school system, we're still managing and supporting our families and identifying calm down corners. Our teachers have been amazing in offering yoga classes via Zoom as well. And then our wellness workshop. So this ties to our teacher wellness. And so most of the classes prior to COVID were in person and in our museum. And so we've been able to, I think this was a very effortless pivot where we were able to launch most of the workshops virtually. And so this is an image you can see here from one of our teachers teaching a yoga class. But essentially, this is just one example. We have a myriad of classes where our parents and teachers are able to learn a new hobby while in quarantine. And so essentially in closing, the principles that we've committed to during this time was just safety first, ensuring our families receive what they need to be as comfortable as possible during this time, consistency and predictability, so creating a sense of normalcy for our students, even in uncharted and unfamiliar time, and then, empathy and relentlessness, so giving space for emotional needs, and supporting both the internal and external needs of our families.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for giving us real insight into how a smaller school network within CPS is handling this moment and truly building on all of the exceptional work already happening at the macro level. And we now want to have our final speaker. And what we were hoping was to really have this focus on a scholarly lens. And Dr. Kelly Ferguson is a professor at the School of Education at Loyola University Chicago. And even within a school that as a whole is committed to social justice, she is widely known and respected for her unique level of commitment to social justice. Her dissertation was on supporting practitioners, particularly as it relates to Black male education. And she has been a thought leader in that and many other topics. And so, Dr. Ferguson, let me turn it over to you. And I should unmute so that you can not only have it turned over to you, but actually participate fully. Sorry about that.
That was ever so kind, Seth. Thank you so much, and greetings to everyone. Our question is, who is Kelly Ferguson? Foremost, Kelly Ferguson is a very proud educator who served 10 of the most fulfilling years of her professional career as a classroom teacher. Education truly is my life's work. It is my purpose. As Seth shared, I have a heart for our Black males, which is reflected in my research, as well as that of undocumented students. I do consulting work with school districts and other educational agencies around culturally responsive teaching, as well as implicit bias. And I am now honored to support the development of our pre-service teachers and here at Loyola. Next slide, please. And next slide, thank you. In 2013, our teaching and learning department redesigned our teacher preparation program to a completely field-based and developmental growth model, with candidates beginning their preparation their freshman year. These 4 cornerstones that you see here represent the principles that the Teaching, Learning, and Leading with Schools and Communities, or TLSC, program was built upon. Partnerships with schools and communities, including but not limited to community organizations and cultural institutions. Teacher preparation for diverse classrooms, with the idea that our candidates should be prepared to teach all learners. Then we have authentic teaching, which simply is based on the premise that what we do in our capacity as educators is beyond an exercise in academics. So there is this marriage between the theoretical and the pragmatic. And then, as well as our the final cornerstone, our professional learning communities, or commonly referred to as PLCs. PLCs are designed to mirror the PLCs that candidates will actually experience when they enter the classrooms. And essentially what they are is a unique opportunity that is situated during the final 3 weeks of every single semester throughout their 4 years, where they collaborate with their peers, freshmen through seniors, who are grouped according to their area of specialty. The instructor then has the liberty to design the curriculum however they choose, so it can run the gamut of active shooter drills, implicit bias, courageous conversations, you name it. Next slide, thank you. Our program is divided into phases with spiraling curriculum, such that candidates gain multiple exposures to content. So that means that there are no standalone courses such as a course in social justice, but they have multiple iterations and exposure to it. And it culminates with a year-long student teaching internship. It truly is a robust program that is diametrically different from our traditional teacher preparation programs, and one that I am very proud to be a part of. Next slide, thank you. So to the Rona, COVID-19, as everyone shared, truly upended the world as we knew it, including the educational landscape. Everyone was doing their part to be of service to others. Some served as those essential workers. Some people made masks, and I was compelled to do something in our context as educators to support the cause. The time of COVID happened to be providential in that it occurred a few weeks before our professional learning communities, or our PLCs, began. So I was talking to a CPS teacher friend of mine and just asking her how things were going for her colleagues. And she shared that while teachers were receiving a wealth of resources for e-learning, there simply was not enough time to vet those instructional materials to then create full-fledged lesson plans that were then differentiated for students across varying proficiency levels. And that was my aha moment. And that's how the Loyola Cares model program was birthed. And Loyola Cares stands for Candidates Taking Action in Response to an Emergency Situation. So I then designed our elementary education-focused PLC to reflect our Ignatian heritage at Loyola in terms of using our gifts and service to others by supporting my CPS teacher friend at Goethe in particular, by having them work in small groups, vetting those instructional resources. Each group selected a virtual field trip, connected it to a specific content area that she indicated, and included an arts-based component. That was 3 weeks, but I said there's still more that we can do. And so I then reached out to our amazing Professor John Schmidt, who does a whole bunch of amazing work with a lot of our partner schools, to indicate that we wanted to help in some way. So he made the connection between SEN and McCutcheon, which was amazing. SEN shared that with their International Baccalaureate, or their IB program, the 10th grade students create these personal projects, which are phenomenal. And essentially what it includes are research papers, process journals, and products that can vary depending on the student's choice. But nonetheless, teachers would typically take students' work, select highlights, and display it to celebrate their accomplishments. However, given COVID-19, they just did not have the time to do that. And so they wanted to be sure to be able to celebrate their achievements. So what I did was drafted up a flyer, asked for volunteers to support in this regard. And we had about 30 students who volunteered. Keep in mind, the school year was over. Some of these volunteers were people who graduated, but nonetheless, one thing I love about our students is that they truly have a heart for this work, and so they were all in, and they are continuing to finish up this work right now. The other end of this is that this digital library that they create also serves as an opportunity to demonstrate to 9th grade students and their parents what they can expect the next year when it's their turn to engage in this personal project. And then finally, there is the McCutcheon project. So this work was based on an expressed need from them that they could use some social-emotional learning resources. So right now in our graduate program that is occurring right now, the summer session, it's built into the coursework. And so they are developing a public website that brings together social-emotional learning, that brings together culturally responsive pedagogy with a list of annotated resources that SEN and McCutcheon educators can use. Next slide, please. All right, then this other initiative stems from actually a gap that came to light in our redesigned teacher preparation program that was amplified by the COVID-19 pandemic, which is a missed opportunity to prioritize technology as a tool to address issues of social justice and inequity. Currently, our usage of technology is very passive in nature. So then the question for us then became, how do we better prepare our pre-service teachers who are tasked with learning alongside a cooperating teacher, an instructional mentor who is also adjusting to this new normal, and the pressing needs of the parents, students, and the organizations that they work for. Next slide, please. Why this matters is twofold. So one, many school districts, including CPS, took a great first step in furnishing students with the one-to-one devices and the high-speed internet access. However, infrastructure that only addresses the issue of physical infrastructure alone will not yield the 21st century preparedness, and it compounds the issues of the digital divide, particularly for underserved students. Secondly, we have teacher candidates who will enter their final year of preparation who have not had exposure to technology-enhanced culturally responsive teaching, which could then be a support to their cooperating teacher. Next slide. So an exploratory pilot study is being developed now, which is designed to support our seniors in their year-long student teaching internship to design effective online lessons to include technology-enhanced, culturally responsive teaching. Next slide. With the outcomes, the desired outcomes of one, introducing them to the set of technology and online curricular teaching standards, increasing their understanding of how to design technology-enhanced lessons, as well as doing that with a culturally responsive teaching lens. Next slide. And effectively, what this will look like is as follows. So in the beginning of this fall semester, a call will be sent out, if you will, that solicits volunteers from our seniors in their one-year school-based internship to participate in the in this research that again equips them with these specific skill sets and competencies. At the conclusion, and the idea is for them to be able to take that again and to be able to use that in practice with their cooperating teacher and their students. At the conclusion of the study, data will be collected. Focus groups will have focus groups and will revise the model as needed. Ultimately, what is hoped is that this revised and hopefully more comprehensive model will then be able to be shared with our professional learning community instructors, to share with them to essentially increase our bandwidth in terms of who we're able to touch, who we're able to support with these skill sets, competencies, which we know to be important. The other piece that ultimately I'm getting at is trying to create a model that we can use to then update, modify our existing teacher prep program, because obviously there's a need and we haven't met that need, and this would be ideally a good first step.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ferguson, and thank you all for what were both powerful and truly insightful comments. I want to now turn to questions, and I'm going to get us started, and then I'm going to come over to our chat box. We've received a few from people privately. You're also welcome, if you still have a question, to send it on. And I want to start by acknowledging that oftentimes entrepreneurship and innovation get grouped in universities into a business school. But what you all just described, in my mind, are some of the best examples of entrepreneurship in this moment, period. I mean, I think the way that you've been able to truly innovate in the full child experience, making sure they have food, making sure they have digital access, and then the pedagogy itself is phenomenal. And I'm curious because in our kind of conversations about entrepreneurship, we often talk about how when there's a disruption, even if that disruption is temporary, it changes the marketplace afterward. And so I'm eager to just take a look beyond COVID and to ask all of you, you know, after COVID, what do you see changing in education, both because of what you said, LaTanya, about how this has been sobering and it's brought us even more kind of acutely aware of the inequities that existed, and because this has given us the chance to test out lots of new ideas. And even though we know the best is to have students in class, we're also learning there are other opportunities that may be effective in education. And so I'm eager to have any of you take that, but I see Chief McDade, you leaning in, so maybe we can start with you, if not to punish you for that, and then I see Dean Hanfield laughing, so we'll punish him by having him go next, if that's a fair way to go here.
Well, you know, it's an interesting question. I was on a panel with Fordham Institute, and I answered a question that sparked a lot of, you know, discussion when I said that, you know, remote learning, one thing I've learned from COVID and having to pivot so quickly to the unknown is that remote learning will never go away. At this point, it's not just germane to COVID-19, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's in every crisis, you got to find an opportunity. And I think, and I'm sure Dr. Ferguson will agree to this, is that we've known for quite some time that what happens in the classroom needs to change. And we still have classrooms that look the same way they did when we were sitting in the seats, right? And so we have to make sure that we're providing our students with the 21st century skills to be competitive in a global society. And so if nothing else, I think this time that we're in has forced, in some respects, us to recognize that the classroom has to look different. It has to feel different, and it has to mirror the lived experience of our students every single day. Our students are digital natives, right? So they're coming into this world. I think about sitting in the doctor's office and you see a 1 or 2 year old sitting on their parent's lap and they have a device, right? So that's all they know from the time they enter this world. Yet when they come into our classrooms, it doesn't look or feel, in some respects, anything like the world around them. So I think it's an opportunity here. I absolutely love what Dr. Ferguson laid out in terms of what's happening, or what should happen by way of pre-service teachers being prepared to enter into this space, not just with the technological skills to integrate technology, because we all can integrate technology, but not change the face of education in doing that. Our students need to learn how to utilize technology to access learning, right? And to be not just consumers of knowledge, but producers of knowledge as well. And our teachers have to learn how to do that. And I think one thing that I want to make sure that I call out is the fact that with this also comes the sobering fact that the role that media plays in the narratives that we see play out in the images that we see that represent our students in the classroom, and how we harness technology to provide a counter narrative for our young people to have a sense of identity that's positive and a place in our world and our society as contributors and valued citizens. So there's a lot, I think, that could be covered around how we utilize technology, but to get to the root of it, it's how we're not just accessing technology, but using it to enhance education in a way that our students have identity, agency, and authority in the classroom.
Thank you, Chief McDade. Dean Henfield, can we get your thoughts on this?
Love it. Love every piece of it. When I think about the School of Education, again, 1 year into my first ever deanship, and I just see the possibilities are endless. And strangely enough, I owe a lot of it to the pandemic that we're in right now, right? So you talked about education and the fact that we should be thought of as entrepreneurial and innovative and so on and so forth. And if we're really serious about partnering with our community partners, we just heard from the Chief of Education in Chicago Public Schools the importance of remote learning and how it can be infused into more of what we do in education. I'm listening, and everyone in my school needs to be listening. Because if we're serious about being partners and putting their needs first, then we need to get in line and get on board and reevaluate exactly what we're doing. And because we're already doing excellent work, I can stand by that. And as you heard from Dr. Kelly Ferguson, that much is true, but there's always more that we can do. So I heard you loud and clear, Chief, and we'll be working on that as soon as possible. But I also saw a comment in the chat box to state that some of the teachers that we have who are currently in our schools were not trained to do that. And that's absolutely true. And we all know that that's the case. However, if we're serious about schools of education being places for innovation yet again, perhaps some of the things that we're experimenting with can be done in concert with CPS. Mm-hmm. How can we work as close partners in this work? How can we innovate together as opposed to silos, which is oftentimes the case? And you also talked at the tail end about the identity of our students. And again, we mentioned very early on, everything that we're experiencing is not new. It's only been amplified by the pandemic, right? Which is exactly why we're moving towards becoming a more anti-racist organization at Loyola University, Chicago. And one of the things that I will not stand for is any student graduating from my School of Education in particular, who does not understand the unique needs of Chicago and its citizens. We have Black and brown students and families and community members who have been left at the bottom of the well for too long. And we talked about it in broad social justice terms, no more. We understand what those issues are. They're very clear. We have all the data. We have all the information we need to move on and act with. There's no excuses anymore. And again, working with partners like CPS and others in the community, we can really make a difference in the city. I firmly believe that.
Dr. Ferguson, can we come to you? And I will also mention this question in the chat box associated with what Dean Henfield talked about around how we even evaluate teachers in terms of instruction online. And just given your expertise, I wonder if you have thoughts on that in addition to the questions already at hand.
Yeah, so absolutely. Even so, I mentioned several initiatives, but naturally, we've been thinking about other contexts in which we could apply this. So there are certain courses that we teach where I was speaking to the lead of one of the courses last week, and I was sharing, this technology piece is a big deal. We need to find ways to prioritize it in as many courses as we can. And so he brought up a good point that Stephanie Kimmel shared here, is that people make the erroneous assumption that because many people are digital natives, teacher candidates in particular, that necessarily means that they know how to create with technology. And those are very different. So again, it's just something that has to be prioritized in our teacher preparation programs. And I love the idea proposed by Dean Henfield regarding ways that possibly what came to mind as he was speaking is, is there a model that can be designed in some way that we can connect with our CPS partner schools in some way to provide, whether that's like a webinar or whatever the case might be. But we say that our program in teaching and learning is mutually beneficial. So that would be a great opportunity to be of support to our CPS partner schools, because they have been incredibly generous with us. And I think, again, that's just part of the nature of an applied program, is that we take it from theory to practice. We design this, and hey, let's share it with our partner schools who have given us so much.
Well, not to put too much pressure on you, Jennifer, but I think you have our last word here. And so I'm curious for you just to look out to that future and, from your perspective, from a KIPP Chicago perspective, what do you see as one element that will be different for the good after COVID?
I was thinking through this because I believe that, it's definitely a challenging question, but what I believe now has happened is that, like many of you have already shared, that we already knew that there were so many inequities happening within our communities. But I believe that there's still been this commitment or this belief that education alone is the answer. Like, as long as you get a good education, you'll be able to be successful. And I think what the benefit of what's happening with COVID is now that we have, the world has stopped, and there has been hyper focus on racial injustice, the digital divide, and everything that's happening at once, and it's all interconnected. And we are no longer having to tell our own story. We have, you have advocates at this point who are able to see it and see the narrative. I think there's power in not telling someone what to do, but giving them the information, having them create the formulation or the thought on their own. And I believe that's what's happening in the world now. Like, there's global protests, given my connection with my family and historical connections. I think this is the first time that this has happened, that we've seen it at this magnitude. So what I believe is that while I personally have been affected by COVID by losing my father, but there's the numbers that we're seeing, they're a narrative, and that's because it does transcend some color boundaries or race boundaries. We're all connected and all affected by this. And so I believe the narrative itself is being told by, we're living it, but it's also being seen and told by our neighbors and our friends and so on, who can act as advocates for us.
Well, that is both a sobering and a powerful way to end, because it speaks to the fact that these inequities are deep-seated and that they are so far beyond education. And the proof, just to affirm what you've said, is that if you look at people that are equally educated, there is a huge gap in income in this country based on race. And we know that is ultimately coming from the systemic racism embedded in every level of our institutions. And so that is the sobering part. But the hopeful part is that we are reckoning with it, and that as we reckon with it, we will understand that educators have a role to play, but all of us have an important role to play. And that's why it's so beautiful that Dean Henfield is leading our racial justice initiative here at Loyola, so that we can not only be making sure that our educators are ready for this, but that they are in an ecosystem that is equally ready, so that when they do their job in education, they see those incredible kids who go through to their post-secondary degrees against all odds, getting the same pay and the same wealth opportunities that frankly people that are white have had in this country. So thank you all for this really powerful conversation about navigating education excellence and equity. And most of all, I mean, truly, thank you for what each of you are leading. It is inspiring to see how you all have pivoted to really be responsive, and hopeful to see how we can hopefully play that forward toward greater equity in the future. And thanks to everyone who joined us and for the leadership you're showing in this moment as well.
Thank
Thanks
you,
you all.
Seth.
Thank you.
Thanks, Seth.
Thank you, Jennifer and Dean Henfield.
Thank you all. Great dialogue. Let's keep it going.